ridiculous.
Ridiculous, but I bet it was for a significant amount of money.
Still ridiculous.
Yeah, but fun. I'd watch it. Look, Jake Paul wants to test himself against actual, not just world champion, but one of the greatest of all time.
Really fought, and it wasn't fixed, Jake Paul would not survive 45 seconds.
I don't know about that. I think it would take a few rounds.
Really?
But yeah, first of all, Jake is a lot bigger. Jake's a lot bigger.
But what way would they fight?
Well,
it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have told you, I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my what I'm looking.
Joe Rogan was left stunned after learning Jake Paul tried to line up Francis Ngannou as his next opponent following the collapse of the Gervonta Davis fight. On his podcast, Rogan called the idea insane and borderline reckless, pointing out that Ngannou is one of the most terrifying punchers in all of combat sports. He questioned whether Jake truly understands the danger he'd be stepping into, but admitted that if the fight ever happened, it would be a massive spectacle.
Francis, this is Francis telling the story. Nick used to call Francis and says, "Hey, we need your help. We need an opponent for Jake. Tank is out." And Francis says, "All right." And Francis says, "Well, how can I help you?" And Keekser says, "Well, we're looking at an opponent for Jake. Tank Davis is out." And Francis says, "All right, but specifically, how can I help you?" Keekser takes a third swing at the bat. He says, "Well, we need an opponent. We need a boxer. We need a partner. We need somebody to fight Jake. Tank is out." And Francis asks him again, "Okay, what?"
Once Jake Paul's exhibition with Gervonta Davis fell apart due to Davis facing serious legal issues, Paul's team scrambled for a replacement. One of the big names that surfaced was Francis Ngannou, the former UFC heavyweight champion turned crossover boxer. His size, knockout power, and global profile make him one of the scariest opponents Jake could possibly choose.
And now we have potential opponent names and some people being ruled out coming into today. This is not a joke. It was said by Mike Coppinger and others that the #1 candidate to replace Tank Davis in a Jake Paul fight, probably on a different date, was going to be Francis Ngannou. What the But we have an update on that and other potential names that Jake could fight. Again, I think on a separate date, and why I think the Jake and Tank fight is completely off. No more, maybe no more.
Michael Bisping didn't hesitate to call the rumored matchup completely unrealistic. He emphasized the massive size gap, reminding fans that Jake's original opponent was Gervonta Davis, a much smaller lightweight. Jumping from Davis to Ngannou, Bisping said, is going from one end of the spectrum to the extreme other, creating not just a skill mismatch, but a huge difference in raw power, reach, mass, and legitimate physical threat.
Gervonta Davis really did take the piss. I mean, that was just the craziest shout ever. To go from fighting Gervonta Davis, way smaller, to now fighting boxing Francis Ngannou. I mean, listen, if he does it, fair play. But I just call #1 bullshit on this brother, because I don't see this happening. No.
This is #1 bullshit.
I just don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. Nate Diaz, yeah, 100%. I mean, he beat him once already. I'm sure Nate Diaz would love to get another big payday, because obviously boxing on Netflix and going up against Jake Paul, given his success, given the name that he has, and given the magnitude of his events, Nate Diaz will get paid an absolute fortune once again. We know that it wasn't too long ago Jake Paul was talking about boxing Anthony Joshua, and that never came to fruition. There's absolutely no way he would box Anthony Joshua. If he did, if he was to do something like that, whether it be Anthony Joshua or Francis Ngannou, I'd give him his props, I'd give him his credit, and you never know. Maybe he would do it just for the clout, because in many ways it would be, sorry about the airport notifications, it would be, an admirable thing to do, and it would be Jake Paul taking on somebody.
According to Ngannou, Jake Paul's team reaching out felt abrupt and totally misaligned with his current plans. While money was discussed, Ngannou said the offer didn't make professional sense. He questioned how moving from a lightweight like Davis to a heavyweight like him could be seen as a logical replacement, and made it clear this wasn't about a payday, it simply wasn't the right fight.
Jake I was so confused, I wasn't expecting that at all. And he said, yeah, Jake Paul, he's fighting. And I'm like, no, bro, come on. Don't disrespect me like that. And then they even say they even come out after and say, and what if the number are good? He sent out some number. I'm like, it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started talk. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my.
Former UFC champion Daniel Cormier issued a harsh warning for Jake Paul. He highlighted Ngannou's devastating power and the huge mismatch in both experience and physicality. Cormier said Jake is not prepared to deal with a heavyweight striker built like Ngannou, stressing that the risks far outweigh any potential reward. This isn't just entertainment, it's dangerous.
Now, Francis Ngannou, Jake Paul don't want those problems. I can't say it any different. Jake Paul does not want any Francis Ngannou problems. He don't. He does not want those issues. While I think it's crazy and I credit him for doing that, and I'm surprised he did that, this could be a ploy. Him poking out his chest, saying, I want Francis. He don't want those Francis Ngannou problems. I don't care what Anthony Joshua did to Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul gets in there with Francis. Francis will knock his head off this planet. You don't want those Francis problems. I watched Francis put down Tyson Fury. Sure, Anthony Joshua beat him. But even if Jake got power, I don't think he got power to be dealing with Francis. Because all the
Cormier went even further, questioning Jake's motives and suggesting this is more about headlines than competition. He warned that Jake severely underestimates what it means to fight a heavyweight who can punch through gloves. Ngannou's power is legendary in MMA, but in boxing, where the punches are sharper and more focused, that danger only increases. Cormier believes Jake could be in for a very short and painful night if he takes the fight unprepared.
is much different than mixed martial arts. The target audience might be the same, but the demographics different. The places where people are brought up are different. There's bigger entourages in boxing. It's just a different world in boxing. We've known that from the very beginning. We know that Gervonta Davis was not going to just play to Jake Paul's rules. I still don't know exactly why this thing is falling apart, but it is falling apart bad. It is bursting at the seams. We are almost exactly where we should have never started. This should have never gotten started, but it did. But we are almost now exactly where we need to be.
Analysts across the sport have raised red flags about the short notice proposal. They argue that Jake wouldn't have nearly enough time to prepare for someone as dangerous as Ngannou, and from Ngannou's side, jumping in this late makes no strategic sense. Many experts compare the idea to Tyson Fury's bout with Ngannou, another crossover spectacle built on name value, mismatch, and curiosity. Even Fury, the heavyweight champion, admitted Ngannou gave him one of his toughest fights in a decade. That only adds to the belief that Jake Paul would be severely outmatched.
The thing about this is, okay, if they push it back to December, then that's slightly different. But this is the kind of one situation where you're kind of 10 days out, 2 weeks out from a fight, whenever they first got wind of this problem. This is the kind of situation where it would be possible that Jake Paul and Nikita Badarian and MVP, who are very, very shrewd people, this is the one occasion where they might end up making a mistake, taking someone at short notice who they shouldn't take. Because there'd be a whole raft of people putting their hand up for it, wouldn't they? Thinking, I'll take him at short notice. I'll make out that I've been sitting on a beach, eating and drinking for the last 6 months. I'll but anything just to get in there with him. And then on the night, I'm gonna knock his head off. There'll be loads of people putting their hand up for this, and you'd have to be incredibly careful about who you took at short notice, because for it to have any kind of meaning, you would need to take a decent opponent at short notice, because obviously they're up against it because it's short notice. You couldn't take some barely warm body at short notice, because that would be even worse than giving them full notice. So this is the one area, the one situation in which it would be easy for them to make a mistake, but they don't make mistakes with things like this. They just don't. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they haven't been tempted into, you know, somebody. Yeah, Ngannou, that'd be a mistake. It'd be such a mistake. I know he got flattened by Joshua, but so what? You know, Joshua is a two-time unified champion of the world, and Ngannou's 270 pounds of absolute granite. That would have been a terrible mistake if they'd given him the fight.
And he dropped, like, people. I know, my opinion, Tyson Fury won that fight with Ngannou, but he still put Tyson Fury.
He was close.
Chael Sonnen reacted with equal parts amusement and genuine concern. He said that from a pure sporting standpoint, the fight doesn't make sense, it's more about seeing how much punishment Jake can withstand. Sonnen reminded fans that Ngannou dropped Tyson Fury with a single clean shot. If a giant like Fury struggled to absorb Ngannou's power, expecting Jake Paul to survive it is unrealistic.
Fury knew there was a check. Name one person you'd rather see Jake Paul fight than Francis Ngannou. Is a real challenge. How Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren, Anderson Silva, Mike Tyson, how those aren't real challenges, I don't know. But this is the story as we're told. And do you see where that would satisfy so much? Do you see where that would force even the biggest hater to be quiet? And my job for something to make sense is the biggest check against the easiest opponent. I cannot think of anything I would rather see.
Despite Jake Paul's reputation for turning unusual matchups into major events, this one isn't landing the same way. Observers say the fight feels directionless and more like a PR stunt than real competition. With ticket sales flat even after weeks of promotion, many believe Jake's strategy of chasing extreme matchups may finally be losing its charm.
Jake is like 60 pounds bigger than he is, right? Like, Mike was obviously far older than Jake, and that was the big knock on that fight. Mike should not have been in there with Jake. Said that many times. Jake has fought so hard against people saying he's bad for the sport, he doesn't actually want to fight or step up or do any of this stuff. And I've kind of had his back when I'm like, no, he is doing what most boxers have done early in their career. But this gives those people more ammo to be like, yeah, bro, look, this is what we're talking about. When we say he's bad for the sport, or when we say that he's doing stuff that doesn't make sense and he's making a mockery of things, this is what they're talking about. And again, I wouldn't have any problem with it if Tank was way past the point where he could fight competitively at his weight class and have fights with guys like Shakur Stevens, or even, again, rematching.
Chael Sonnen added that while Jake's confidence is entertaining, Francis Ngannou is a different level of danger. Jake doesn't have Tyson Fury's size, power, or durability, and if Fury barely handled one Ngannou punch, it's hard to imagine Jake lasting long under that kind of violence.
A hold of the guy or try to squeeze him. You can only bludgeon and be bludgeoned back. I think you're got an uphill battle to question somebody. But they have been very effective in doing just that to Jake. Hey, you know, you start with this NBA guy, and then even those MMA guys, you know, they're not boxers. And then when you got around to the boxers, but they weren't current boxers. Then when you get around to the current boxers, they're not big enough boxers. And I just loved it. When I heard that Francis Ngannou might be going against Jake, I loved it. I mean, what's that gonna look like? How many of those shots from Francis can you take? Tyson Fury, if you're talking clean, Tyson Fury only took one. Everything else, Tyson was able to roll with. Big Francis only had to hit him one time. Like, that's a...
Tim Bradley emphasized that the cancellation of Paul versus Davis didn't just affect the fighters, it triggered a financial domino effect. Promoters, networks, venues, sponsors, and marketing partners all lost money. The fight was expected to generate major pay-per-view revenue, but Davis's legal issues forced broadcasters and brands to back away to protect their reputations.
I've ever seen in the history of boxing, bro. Seriously. I'm like, $40 million, bro. Wealth. Literally wealth, bro. Going down the drain. I don't understand it. I can't make the... I don't understand it. But I'll tell you this. You know, MVP promotions, whatever the hell y'all call it, most valuable promotions, shit, more like rookie promotions. Yeah, more like rookie promotions. You didn't know what you were dealing with. You had no clue. This has always been down Tank's alley, man. Now, let me just say one thing. You know,
With millions already invested in promotion and logistics, much of that money is now gone. Bradley used the situation to highlight how fragile boxing economics really are. One fighter's misconduct can wipe out an entire event's value. He also explained that if Jake were to face someone like Ngannou, his entire training approach would need to change. Ngannou fights at around 260 pounds and hits like a truck. For Paul to survive, he'd need months of focused preparation, adding muscle, improving durability, upgrading footwork, sparring with top heavyweights, and abandoning the playbook he uses against much smaller fighters. Analysts agree, this can't be treated like another influencer fight. Without serious preparation, Jake would be stepping into something he cannot handle.
Be something unique. It would be something incredible. It's the same reason that I would be intrigued by a Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight, although I would never advise Jake Paul to take a Anthony Joshua fight. I wouldn't advise him to take a Francis Ngannou fight either, because as much as Anthony is far better, which we saw when they actually fought, Joshua slept Francis Ngannou quicker than me after 2 melatonin. I mean, it was quick, fast, in a hurry, completely dominant. But we also saw Francis Ngannou go toe-to-toe with the heavyweight champion of the world at that time. Yes, he was out of shape. We understand that. But Tyson Fury on that night got the shock of his life when Francis Ngannou not only went toe-to-toe, but put him down and danced on him. To this day, I think that fight could have gone Francis's way. Point being, there are levels to this shit. Not just in boxing, but in combat in general. And the size difference Francis would have over Jake would be incredible, but it would have been a great event, and a lot of people would have tuned in. Francis, though, is saying that's not happening.
How can they go from like Gervonta Davis to Francis Ngannou? Like, I mean, Gervonta Davis is a fantastic boxer, but and is a one-shot knockout artist. But come on, like the weight different and everything, it make no sense.
It's a good point. I mean, obviously, Francis is right about the weight difference, but it's a good point in general for what do you do next? Jake has sparred guys like Shakur Stevenson, Ray Ford, Montana Love to try to prepare for Tank Davis. And even if you book this fight on December 12th or December 19th, that's still a completely different fight than you were going into. Completely different matchup, size-wise, skill-wise, the things that you're going to need to even try to compete.
Is this matchup a thrilling high-risk spectacle, or a lopsided mismatch that should never happen? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.